This episode of Dorking Out is brought to you by the 2017 Adobe, the little car that's made out of clay. Base models start at just $179. Financing is available for those of you whose last name isn't Rockefeller.
And the letter C. Sometimes it makes the sound of a K, like the Vulcan word Katra, and sometimes it makes the sound of an S, as in my name, Sonia. So it's useless. Chris's name starts with a C. This is not a joke, just a hard fact.
Houston, flight is go.
Mila, let's go.
From Assignment X, Amalgamated Storytelling, and thesoniashow.com, it's Dorking Out with Sonia Mansfield and Christopher Allen Smith.
Welcome to episode 41 of Dorking Out, a podcast for people who like to dork out about stories and the stories and culture that we love. That means movies and TV, books and podcasts, and boy, oh boy, are we going to talk about podcasts tonight, and everywhere else that you find stories that interest you or us, because this is our podcast. This is the Ghost in the S-Town edition. With me today is my co-host, professional writer, and author of The Sonia Show, Sonia Mansfield.
Hey there.
Hello.
With me today is my co-host, Emmy Award-winning filmmaker and nerd author, Christopher Allen Smith. In this week's episode, we chat about S-Town, a podcast from This American Life and Serial. All 7 episodes dropped last Tuesday, and we listened to every episode. We did our homework. Is it addictive listening, like Serial Season 1, or is it disappointing, like Serial Season 2? In our second segment, we review the live-action remake of Ghost in the Shell and talk about the controversy surrounding the casting, and more importantly, is it a good movie? And we end our show by sharing what we're dorking out about this week, including the series finale of Big Little Lies, which just concluded last night, because we're recording on Sunday, so it's actually tonight. But when you're listening, it'll be last night. We have thoughts and feelings about it. We have a lot to talk about. So let's get this podcast started.
That brings us to topic 1, S-Town and podcasting as art. You know, for a podcast which prides itself on talking about stories from far and wide, movies and TV, books and podcasts, we have done precious little chatting about podcasts. And now, after today, we may never do it again. Because after our discussion of S-Town, it may be obvious that the chances of ever finding anything as good as S-Town in this podcasting medium from now till the end of time are slim to none. Yes, this is only supposed to be an intro, but S-Town is a medium-defining masterpiece. I've said it in the setup. So it's been known for a while that the team behind the true crime podcast, the already mega-hit podcast Serial, was working on a new podcast which would be released Netflix style, all 7 episodes at once. It happened this last Tuesday, March 28th. Executive producers produced by much of the Serial team, Ira Glass, Sarah Koenig. Among them, S-Town is actually produced by host Brian Reed and his co-producer, Julie Snyder. On the surface, it's an investigation of a rumored murder by the son of a rich business owner in a small Alabama town. But as to anyone who has listened can tell you, the story soon moves out of that arena into something much more revealing, much more special than just a regular true crime drama. We won't reveal too much more than that because it's the surprises that are one of the things that make this so special. Sonia, what did you think of S-Town?
I super love it. I thought it was so good. I can't wait. I think I might want to listen to it again, actually.
Definitely.
I think it's so amazing. What started is we really thought, because, this is from the people that did Serial, this is going to be another true crime.
Right.
That's kind of what everybody thought. And instead of it being like this murder mystery, it's more of kind of like a sad family drama.
Right.
that turns into a story about, I don't want to give too much away, but like, repression and mental illness and just illness, I guess.
Right.
And, I hate to tie everything back to November's election, but here I go again
What?
on my own.
All right.
I've been
let me see
trying
this.
to understand the motives, the situations, the plight of my fellow Americans who voted for Trump. Like trying to understand the why, I guess. And I'm not saying that that's what this podcast is about, by the way, but it is an insight into a part of the country that I know nothing about.
Right.
I really don't. And this is why I was a huge fan of last year's Hell or High Water, because there are a lot of stories out there to tell. And if look at our TV shows. They're all cops, lawyers, and doctors, and they all live in LA, New York, or Chicago.
Right. There's
and when we do get something that's based in like, a state in the South or something, it's like True Detective.
Right.
And so I liked hearing a true story or just a story that's different.
Yeah.
Even if it's sad, even if it's frustrating, at least it's different. And I think it proves the idea of like we all have a story.
Yeah.
And that everybody has a story, because really this could have been anyone's story. Like we all have stuff.
Right.
And that's not what the S stands for in S-Town. It stands for something else. And we all have that.
That we don't want to bleep out every time we say it. But
yes.
yeah.
So I'll just keep saying stuff.
That's right.
What did you think about how they released all the episodes at once? Did you like that?
I really liked it, and I think it's pretty clear from basically the second episode why this is essentially a podcast miniseries rather than
right.
They're launching a new podcast. I wonder where it goes. It goes. There's a beginning, middle, and end to this story. And for me, it is a fantastic piece of work. It is, kind of like Ezra Edelman's O.J. Made in America. It's like Citizen Kane. It's like Breaking Bad on TV. It's like War and Peace in literature. It is,
if you say so,
the best thing in its medium. It is, I don't think I've ever heard a story told in podcasts better than this one.
You listen to a lot of podcasts. I want to make that. I can't even. I want to say that to our listeners. Like I listen to some podcasts. I listen to some. I listen to like This American Life, and you've been listening to podcasts since there were podcasts, and you listen a lot.
It's quite ridiculous how many podcasts I've listened to. And you know what? I'm going to go down that thread just to give an idea.
For you to say like that this is the best, and for you to say it's telling a story in a way that you've never experienced before is a big deal. And that's what I'm trying to make clear to our listeners. That's a big deal.
I appreciate that, because I've been listening to podcasts since late 2005, I think. And right now I was just checking my thing. I think I have like 180-ish subscriptions on my podcast thing. Now, I don't listen to all those, but I do listen to episodes of each of those. I'll let 10 episodes, for some podcasts, I'll let 10 episodes go by and then pick one to listen to, because not all of them are always worth listening to. But S-Town is, It really is a work of art. It really is a Citizen Kane, War and Peace level examination of the human condition. Why people do what they do. That's one of the things one of the reasons that I'm trying to, that I'm writing and that I try to make films and try to create stuff is to kind of always get at, why do people do what they do? People, for a lot of my life surprise me in the way, you think that you think somebody that's nice would act nice, but they act like a jerk. You think somebody that's been a jerk their whole life, or as much as you've interacted with them, is going to continue to be a jerk, but then they turn around and they do something really nice and magnanimous. And it's just, why do people do what they do? And this podcast takes a character and that kind of calls into the serial podcasting office and says, there's been a murder in the small Alabama town. Come down here and research it. And as Brian Reed starts digging into it, he gets to know the caller, this guy named John, and they get closer and closer, and this character is revealed bit by bit in all his different aspects as a human being, and what he wants and what he misses and what he regrets and what he loves and what breaks his heart. And, it goes back and examines as a kid and growing up. But it's not done in kind of a ridiculous, we're going to tell the biography of this person way. It's done in the way that you find out about a friend, which is you talk to him about this, and then one day in passing they said, oh, when I was 25, I got in a car wreck and I almost died. And, you've known this person for 10 years, but you're just hearing this story for the first time. So you kind of ask questions about that, and you kind of find out about their lives in this back and forth and up and down kind of fashion. And there are a lot of passages in this that become real kind of poetry. And it's really revealing and very touching. And, I'm glad to hear you say the thing about, New York and LA and Chicago and all that, because one of the things, in this kind of red-blue America that's grown up in the last 15 years in a lot of ways, you hear a lot of people kind of from what they defensively call flyover country say, oh, New York doesn't care about us, LA doesn't care about us, Washington doesn't care about us. We're out here on our own struggling to get by, and you guys are just, making fun of us. And, and there's from, from people like us, there's this natural pushback to go, oh no, we tell your stories and we tell everybody's stories. But no, we don't. A story like this, if people tell stories about what they know and what's around them. So 95% of the stories that come out of, the studio and production offices of New York and LA tell stories about people that work in the production offices in New York and LA.
Right.
That they would kind of recognize, or that they want to make fun of. So there is kind of an element sometimes in the crasser arenas of entertainment and media of kicking around the middle of the country.
So the middle of country is so defensive. We have Deliverance.
See, exactly.
We made Deliverance about you guys.
Exactly. See, yes. You're not telling that story.
Stop your complaining. You have Deliverance.
Here's the thing. Wow. Is this what it's like to react to me? Like, oh my God, did she just say that? I know she's kidding, but God, that's so mean. Wow, it's like you're telling a Chris joke. That's just so cruel and uncalled for. And it's funny because it's so uncalled for. Anyway, but yeah, this is a real, because one of the projects that I worked on a couple years ago was a reality show that didn't end up going somewhere in Kentucky. And this show, S-Town, really reminded me of all the little different details of, you go to certain parts of these, southern states, and it does feel like going back in time. But one of the things I noticed when I went to Kentucky or Atlanta, or hearing this part of Alabama, which is I don't think I would like to live there, but B, the way everybody tells stories, everybody in this town The way they talk is so much more expressive and interesting and engaging and vivid and colorful. And, there is something that we're missing in the larger culture by just focusing on New York, LA, and Chicago.
Yeah.
And this is, there's often, I was listening to Crime Writers On, and they talk about Serial, and they did a couple episodes on this show, and they were talking about how a lot of times when Northern and Eastern writers go into the South and start writing a story about something that they find in the South or the Midwest, their story mainly centers around, I'm this big city writer that's going to this small town, and let's look at all the characters.
Right.
You know what I mean? And there is Brian Reed. There
Well,
is
it's
a
the
little
same
bit
way.
of that.
It's the same way they tell a lot of stories that involve African Americans.
Yes.
They give us a white character.
Yeah, exactly. They give us Michelle Pfeiffer to talk about inner city poverty in schools,
Exactly.
as Michelle Pfeiffer is wont to do. Anyway, but here, Brian Reed and the production staff here, they are really careful, and they are really respectful, and they are really, this. I think they started working on this in 2014.
Right.
There are things in 2015 and then 2016. So they've been working on this for years. I mean, they have lived with this. And the thing that's amazing about this is, and this is the last thing I was going to say, is one of my big disappointments in the last 15 years is kind of been the rise of reality show television. Not because reality shows are so awful. It's that reality shows don't really exist. When Survivor first came out, it was these people in a game that or the Real World on MTV. No one had ever been on a show like this before. A show like this didn't exist. So when the cameras were turned on and pointed at these people, they didn't act like people trying to do something in a show. They just sent cameras with people for long enough to record enough stuff to make an interesting show, and people were acting kind of authentically. But now, everything you see in reality television is fake. Everything.
Yeah,
I've seen it where they write lines, they plan scenes, it's all 100% fake. And the reason being is you can't send out a film crew to just shoot for months and months and months on end, hoping that something's going to happen. So when you take all that footage back and put it together, it turns into something. But if they did that, that would be real. You would be seeing real people's lives being lived in a real way, and putting all of that together would reveal something true about real people. This show does that. Brian Reed and his everyone working on this show hung out, talked to, visited with, went to all these different places for 2 years, 2.5 years working on this, getting bit by bit, moment by moment. They've taken 2 years of material and boiled it down to 6.5 hours, 7 hours maybe. And it is, I found myself continually listening to something, and it's just, I can't believe that they had the mic on at that moment when this person said this. I can't believe I'm hearing all of this almost as if I was there.
A serious, a tip of the hat to Brian Reed. Not only is he a really good listener, he asks really smart questions.
Yeah.
And lets people talk.
Yeah. Yeah.
He's not trying to be I'm going to be so clever and say blah, blah, blah. He asks the right questions and he listens.
Yeah.
And he clearly made everybody feel very comfortable, because I continued to, when I was listening, thinking, I can't believe the access he got.
Yeah.
To people. Yeah. And that's one of the things with even the first episode, the first season of Serial, she got a lot of no's.
Yeah.
No one wanted to talk to her. So she was constantly having to recreate things, do a lot of investigating, and then I tried this, and then I tried that, and I called this person, and they won't talk to me, and blah, blah, blah.
Yeah.
So many people talk to him
Yeah.
repeatedly,
Well,
and would like call him all the time.
Yeah. And I that's the thing is I would like to, a tip of the cap to, it took him, there are people in this that at certain points you think are going to be kind of the villains of the piece. But then it comes out later that they're talking to him. And it's not because, he's this spectacular person that's a much better reporter than anybody else. It's because I'd be willing to bet he spent 8 months, 10 months talking with them and interacting with them so they knew him. So they could, he didn't have a deadline breathing down his neck that, well, I've got to put my show out by X date. It's just, we're going to keep working on this until I've talked to everybody. And then once we've talked to everybody and asked all the questions of everybody we want to do, then we're going to boil it down and make something. And
it's so good he did, because then the show never goes where you think it's going to go.
Yeah.
You're like, well, this happened, and this person's probably they are the villain or whatever. And then you listen to the next episode and you understand, he talks to them and you understand their reasoning, their motives. And you're like, that makes sense to me. I can see why they see it this way.
Exactly.
And, and then it ends and you're like, well, I think blank. And then you listen to the next one and you're like, well, no, that's not really the case either. Like, it's just really great.
Yeah.
And I wanted to make sure to mention that this show got 10 million downloads in 4 days.
Which, I'll tell you, is more than our show.
Took Serial just a little bit. It took Serial about 7 weeks to reach that number.
Yeah. No, this is an amazing piece of work. And what's interesting is, and tell me what you think is, I remember listening to the season 1 of Serial, and I was listening to, I think, Crime Writers on, and they were talking about how what they didn't want at the end of Serial, or maybe this was the Slate Serial podcast, what they didn't want at the end of it was to not really have an answer to the question of who murdered, the person in that series. Yes. And they didn't want it to turn into kind of like a meditation on the nature of truth and what a person can know. And Serial, even though it ended well and ended satisfactorily, it kind of was a meditation on the nature of truth and what you could really know. And when this person says they definitely murdered someone, then this person says they definitely didn't. And how do you reconcile that as a person? It's satisfying, but when you want the answer to a question of who murdered someone, if you don't get that answer in a definitive way, it's a little frustrating. This is different because the last episode of this is almost a much tougher task, which is a meditation on the nature of why someone is like they are and what happens to somebody. What is it like to be, not the nature of what it is to be human, but what the nature of it is to be this human and why this person did these things that seem so inexplicable and so heartbreaking and so odd. But then you get to that last episode and it is just, it's really poetic and sad and amazing. And you know what? Yeah, I'm going to listen to it. Tomorrow morning, I'm starting S-Town again.
Start over.
I'm doing it again because I was supposed to be doing a lot of work for a client, who shall remain nameless. And I was I was doing work for them, but I was also half listening to S-Town because I just couldn't stop. And it was
that was
beautiful.
Me. I came home on Friday night and told my husband, I was like, I have to listen to the rest. And went in our room and listened to the rest.
Wow.
Locked myself away. Because I was like, I need to finish this. I'm like, I can't wait one more day.
Yeah. It's
and I have to say, I don't have that reaction very often to a podcast. And by very often, I mean never. So
right.
I was like, I need to finish. And not just because we were going to talk about it on the show,
Right.
but because I really, really could not go to bed until I finished the show.
Yeah. It is a very different media consuming experience than most people. You get something maybe once or twice a year, or maybe not even once a year. Sometimes you could go 2 or 3 years without having a media experience like this. It's
I think that
yeah, it's great.
it's great that they released them all at once. I think that was probably the right call
Oh,
because I feel
definitely.
like with Serial, so especially that first season, there was so much. It was almost like, let's solve a murder, you guys.
Yeah,
Like it was almost like crowdsourcing,
yeah,
and everyone was doing their own research on the internet. And I think with this, if it only one episode came out every week, I think it would be very easy to spoil it for yourself.
yeah, definitely.
So I'm glad they did it this way. It was
Yeah.
a good call.
Yeah, I have heard that people have, did listen to episode 1 and then do a bunch of Googling and find out certain things.
Well, then that's their fault.
Yeah,
They're idiots
But yeah,
who like to ruin stories for themselves.
yeah, it was, yeah, you guys are fools. This was amazing.
Well, they're not idiots. They're not idiots. I take that back.
No,
They
they're
just
idiots. No, you're
don't
right.
they don't want to be surprised.
So, all
Let's
right.
go on to topic 2. Topic 2, Ghost in the Shell, starring Scarlett Johansson and directed by Rupert Sanders, whose previous directing credits include Snow White and the Huntsman, is a live-action remake of the 1995 Japanese anime and book series by the same name. Set in a Blade Runner-inspired future in a Japanese city, Johansson stars as Major, a robot with a human brain who is trying to stop a criminal who is hacking into people's minds and controlling them. The movie also stars Juliette Binoche, a name I'm going to really mispronounce. I believe it's Pilu Asbeek.
I'm sure that's what it is. Pilu Aspeak. I'm sure
sounds
that's
right.
what it is. It is. No, that's
And-
it. He comes,
Okay, and
he
Michael Pitt.
Mhm.
Be quiet. I'm still going. Shush. If that cast for an adaptation of a popular Japanese anime sounds unusual to you, you are not alone. There is a lot of controversy around the casting of this movie, which put 4 white actors in the lead roles, with Japanese actors filling out the supporting roles. And some Asian groups think this is another example of Hollywood whitewashing. And after seeing the movie, I don't think they're wrong. And on top of that, I think this is another example of Hollywood taking a good foreign movie and removing all the story aspects that made it interesting and special and creating a boring, lifeless remake. I'm just going to give my little quick review. I think this movie could have addressed serious topics about what it means to be human, how much technology is too much, about losing our humanity to technology, kind of like Westworld or Ex Machina. And instead, it's just a sci-fi action movie that I found to be kind of uninspired and even worse, kind of boring. Smith, what did you think?
I agree with you in several ways. I remember because I had when I went in this the Rotten Tomatoes score was about 55, I think. I watched this on Thursday night, and it was it was good. There were moments of it that were gorgeous. There were moments of it that were
I will say there's some really great visual effects, though.
Yeah.
I mean, there's stuff that looks cool.
Yeah, this could have almost been, The Matrix 4. But I agree with you. There's a lot of uninspired, a lot of retread stuff. Like, I don't know how many times we have to see a hero or a heroine push through a glass wall shooting a gun, and the glass is breaking in this very slow motion, cool looking way,
Well,
and then they run up on a wall and they're shooting sideways.
Well, yeah.
Yeah.
What's funny is, so in prep for the show, I actually watched the animated movie last night, and it came out in 95. And watching it, I was like, so much of the Matrix is this movie.
All right, yeah. It's been
Like
96 since I saw Ghost in the Shell. So yeah, I don't doubt it.
So watching Ghost in the Shell on Friday night, I was like, gosh, there's a lot of stuff in here that's like the Matrix.
Right.
And then I see the animated movie and I was like, oh, the Matrix was maybe more than inspired by this movie. There's so much that is similar to I mean, and and I'll say, like, the animated movie also has some very like Blade Runner type things about it too, but
yeah,
this one really reminded me of the Matrix.
Yeah, I think that's what it is, and I remember liking it. I remember thinking that I had the kind of reaction where I liked it, but there was a lot of it that kind of went by me a little bit. Sometimes in the way that with movies that when you watch them again, you like them a little more, and you watch them again. Like, part of me is thinking, am I going to watch this in 5 years? Is the reaction and the esteem that this Ghost in the Shell is held in, is it going to be much higher than it is now? It kind of felt like that, where, the more you look into it, the more you dig into it, the more there is, so you kind of like it on repeated viewings. But it was also kind of a little bit, not boring, but a little, it was just there.
I found myself kind of bored, and I found myself watching Scarlett Johansson a lot and thinking, I really like her hair. Maybe I should grow my hair out a little bit and have it cut like that, and I'll get it colored and blah, blah. And then I was like, okay, this movie is clearly not working for me.
Yeah.
If I'm like, she has really great eyebrows, maybe I'll start, I'm going to fill in my eyebrows. That is the sign of a movie that's not working when I start thinking about that stuff.
Yeah.
And this isn't because I went in with some super high expectations for it. It's not because I went in as a big fan of the original anime or the books or any of that. Like, I hadn't seen any of those things. I went in purely as just, I'm going to see this. And I was just so bored.
Yeah.
I thought it was really boring.
Yeah. It was.
And then to watch the original animated one, which seems to have something to say, I was like, I can see why this one was special. And I can't see why this remake had to happen at all. I also have another question. I didn't see Lucy. Did you ever see Lucy?
I did. And
I'm wondering, are they similar? Because I'm wondering, is she going to play a lot of people with special powers that rebel against the people that gave her said powers?
She might.
Is that her thing?
I think, yeah, Lucy is a, Scarlett Johansson as a badass of few words. Yeah, it could be. But like this, that one kind of faded away. That one had a much weirder ending, if I remember correctly.
Okay. You'll have to tell me off the air, because I'll never see it, and you can just tell me the end.
Well, I'm not even sure I can really remember it. I think it's like she's able to finally control time with her mind, and she can rewind it back and forth, and she goes all the way back to the dinosaurs or something. I could be misremembering it. There's probably listeners pulling out their hair right now, going, "That's not what happened at all." But anyway, I
do want to say too that this movie isn't like a straight up remake of the 1995 movie. From it, the stories are kind of different.
Right.
There are like some pieces that are right from the animated movie, but from what I understand, there's some other parts that are taken from the comic series and from the TV show.
Right.
So
exactly.
It's not like a straight shot for shot remake.
Yeah, and I think this might be a good time for us to jump off on that question then, because there has been a lot of controversy about, Hollywood is just taking this and kicking out all the Asians, and putting in white American actors, which I definitely understand, but I want to ask you a question. And that definitely is a problem. That definitely is an issue. So I don't mean to minimize that, but I want to look at it from a different point of view for a second. So The Office comes out in the UK in the late 90s.
It's a gray area. Is that what you're saying?
It could be. No, it's not a gray area.
Just a little hint of what's to come under our final segment.
So when The Office, when Ricky Gervais created The Office is very famous for being transplanted to all these different countries around the world. It came to the United States. It went to, I think, Australia, Brazil, Argentina. I think there's one in the Philippines. It's all over.
Okay. I see where you're going.
When they do The Office India, do you think they worry about replacing white actors with actors of that country? And when other countries,
I think this is different than that.
I do think it's different than that. But let's maybe talk about it. Or when other like Bollywood remakes a lot of American movies with Bollywood actors. And nobody says, oh, well, they're taking these things and they're just putting in their own actors. It seems pretty understood. When the French remake a movie, they put French people in it. When American studios make a movie that's going to come out in America, is it all that nuts to put big-name American actors in it?
I think the difference here is this movie is set in Japan.
Is it?
If this movie was taking place in New York, because it would be New York or LA, we've established that.
That's right.
If it was set in New York or LA, I think that would be different.
Yeah. But
because it is set in Japan. This movie is set in Japan, and it's not.
Hold on though.
And their explanation for why she is not Japanese, it doesn't work for people. It didn't work for me.
Well, it's funny. I was listening to Code Switch and they were talking about this in that they think, the idea that it's essentially white doctors that made her, therefore kind of remaking her in their own image.
Her image, right.
It does kind of work thematically for that story. But here's the other thing, and I agree with you. That is the explanation. I can't remember if it's Ghost in the Shell that takes place in Neo Tokyo or if it's Akira that takes place in Neo Tokyo. I've gotten all of my anime future apocalyptic super cities confused.
I think Ghost in the Shell. I think the anime Ghost in the Shell was in Hong Kong.
Actually, you might be right. But here's my question, because I don't think there were any references. There was references to the government. There was references to the harbor. But I don't think Hong Kong, Tokyo... where I'm going with this is I don't think they were specific about what city this is at all in here. And it could have been... They could have written it that way in order to kind of dodge the question that we're discussing in a,
but everyone else is Japanese except for the four leads, basically.
Yeah. No, I'm with you.
Just like people on the street are Japanese.
I was too
all the advertising, like everything.
I thought that was all. Thought it was all over the place. No, you know what? You're right. All right. Cool. I wouldn't say stand corrected because I wasn't actually saying that I agree with this. I was just putting this out there as a thought experiment of what it means when an American company remakes a movie for an American audience that then does go all over the world. How much can we tweak and change? Yeah.
Right, because we've taken other movies from other countries and remade them. We did it with,
Magnificent
The
Seven.
Grudge.
That's right.
Magnificent Seven. La Femme Nikita.
That's right.
And we Americanize them. I just don't think that, I think they could have done that. Like, just make it more American. Just set it in New York. Make it obvious that it's New York. You can cast all the white people you want.
Yeah. You know what? I think you're right there. I think that is a problem. I think it would have been much, given what we just
And what's
talked
crazy
about.
to me is they care. I'm sorry to interrupt.
No, that's
they
fine.
care. Like Hollywood, these studios, they are very focused on the overseas, the international box office.
Right.
And it seems to me that like casting a Japanese actor, wouldn't that just help with that?
I don't think so. And I'm of two minds with this. One is, and we know this, we've talked about our friend Anthony Ferrante about this, about, one of the reasons that you see big time actors go into small independent movies, horror movies and whatever. And, it's that reaction that a lot of people have of, oh, I can't believe this person's starring in this movie I've never heard of, is because if you can get a certain actor in your movie, you can sell the movie with that actor. So if you're going to make, if you're going to make a big American movie, putting a big American actor that might be able to open a movie is what you do. That's one of the things you do to kind of assure that the audience is going to be familiar and comfortable enough with the movie to go see it. Two,
Right.
And here's something that a lot of Americans don't really talk about, but they should, think about, is America is not the only country with kind of racial perception problems. If you have a lot of Japanese actors in a movie that you're trying to open in China, that might not be helpful.
Right.
Plus,
okay.
So which does kind of explain sometimes why, these big American actors, like Arnold Schwarzenegger is still really big overseas, even though he's, his movies have kind of bombed after bombed after bombed here in the United States. So yeah, and there's a lot of people who would like to see Hollywood casting be more diverse, but especially for the reason that you're talking about. These movies go overseas, so why couldn't they? Why doesn't it make a difference? Because if you put a lot of Japanese actors in it, or if you put a lot of Chinese actors in it, the Japanese box office might be a little soft. So there's all of those things to consider where, they just kind of split the difference. And for people looking for diversity, listening to me right now, they're probably pulling their hair out right now. And I don't blame them, because a lot of times when these questions come up of, if we cast this person of this race, is it going to piss off A or B or C? The default is always, you know what? Let's just play it safe and cast a white person. I
don't know if I don't think that really worked out for them this time.
No, it didn't. You're right. It did not work out for them this time, but that's typically how a lot of these whitewashing things did. That's what happened in Doctor Strange with Tilda Swinton becoming the Ancient One, which in the comic books was a kind of very stereotypical yellow peril Asian stereotype. Right. And what they said was, well, we don't want to go down that road and, get our new Marvel comic book movie painted with the brush of racial insensitivity. You know what? Let's just be safe and cast somebody that's not Asian. So that's another example of kind of how that happened. So, yeah, I hear about it. It would be so much more fun if the movie that we were talking about was more interesting than...
Right.
Because we're examining...
Maybe we should have saw Boss Baby.
Well, you know what? Here's what I am horrified to say. Boss Baby. Here's the weekend box office. Boss Baby, number 1, $49 million. Beauty and the Beast.
America?
Number 2,
America, this is why we can't have nice things.
Oh, we can have plenty of nice things. What are you talking about? Stop your
Don't go see Boss Baby.
Stop your
Come on.
scolding of America.
Shame on you, America.
Shame on
Boss
you.
Baby.
Get off your high horse. Good Lord. You're Ghost in the Shell, 19 million. So Ghost in the Shell. So we have just reviewed a movie that's on its way to bombing. Anyway, what would you give? Speaking of Ghost in the Shell, what would you give Ghost in the Shell? On a scale of 1 to 10.
Like a 3.
Or a scale of 0 to 10. 0 to 10.
3.
Sorry. 3. Oh, wow. All right. Interesting. I would probably
bored.
give it... Yeah. I'd probably give it a 5. There are things that I liked about it.
That's awful kind.
When I came out, it's funny. When I came out, I was thinking, oh, maybe 6, low 7, maybe. 6.5, 6. But the more I think of it, it's kind of one of those movies that's kind of like an amnesiac movie, where just it doesn't stick with you. You don't think about it, and then a week later, it's like, did I even see that? That's what this movie is.
That's me with Kong Skull Island.
That's right. So actually, yeah. So a week from now, I might be down with you.
I literally didn't remember that I saw Kong Skull Island.
That's right. We did.
Like, I think my mother asked me about it. Like, hey, did you see Kong Skull Island? And I was like, no. Oh, I did.
Oh, wait, I
did see
did.
that. That's right. You're right. I did see that.
So, all right, Boss Baby.
All
we should have
right.
watched it. Actually, you know what? We're gonna do the audience a favor and give a quick Boss Baby score just for those of you wondering. Ghost in the Shell, 43% on Rotten Tomatoes. So that gives you an idea of where we come in with the critics at large. Boss Baby, 49%. So,
Well, there you go.
there you go. But the good news is, apparently, the makers of Boss Baby are going to be relaunching the Shrek series that I just found out about. So,
Oh,
there's that. Anything else you would like
Okay.
to say on Ghost in the... I guess I saw it?
now let's move on. And that brings us to our final segment, what we're dorking out about this week. And the big thing that I'm really dorking out about is the Big Little Lies finale that was Sunday night. And I want to talk about it. I have a lot of thoughts and feelings. I think we're just going to go ahead and spoil it, like right off the top.
Yeah, that's
So
right.
I
So
hope you guys have watched it.
you need to watch all 7 episodes. I guess this is the week of 7 episode shows. You need to watch all 7
Yes.
episodes of Big Little Lies. It's good. Now that we've warned you, and we're gonna play the spoiler sound now.
I think it's so interesting that the finale of this show was called You Get What You Need, when the episode gave me what I wanted. Like this was like a really satisfying ending.
Yeah.
And I feel like a lot of TV shows kind of mistake an unhappy ending for a powerful ending.
Holy cow,
And
that is
they-
super smart. That is
They-
superbly put.
Oh, thank you. And
For once.
I feel like a lot of times we don't get what we want
Right.
when we watch a lot of these shows. Like we're like, it's really great, but it wasn't the ending I wanted,
Right.
you know, that sort of thing. And I feel like this show gave me the ending I wanted. And I feel a little morbid, but when we finally discover who it is that's been murdered, I did do like I pumped my fist in the air like I won something. Like, yeah!
Right.
Because that's like the closest thing you were going to get to like a happy ending here. And it was very satisfying.
So it's funny.
What do you think?
Well, it's funny because we just made a lot of hullabaloo about how we were going to spoil it, and you didn't say who died or what happened.
Oh, sorry.
We did not actually. Well, no, we don't have to spoil it. That's fine. Now that I think about it.
Well, I think if people are like halfway through the show
Right.
and they're like, I don't want to know, by me saying it's a satisfying ending, they probably know who it is.
Maybe. Yeah, no, that's true. You know what? I
We
like
could we're just gonna spoil it because
No,
we're
no, no.
playing this.
Hold on.
We have
We did play the spoiler thing,
Okay.
but let me tell you, let me see what you think. I do love the absurdity of saying we're going to spoil it and then not spoiling it, so we don't have to spoil it because it turns out we were able to talk our way around it.
I do think we'll probably end up spoiling it. But
Probably.
what did you think?
I really like this, but I have to talk about a little bit of my philosophy for how I do this show before I go on, because I think when we reviewed this, I specifically pinpointed Nicole Kidman's marriage as an interesting examination of domestic violence and the gray areas and this and that and all this. Turns out,
It wasn't so much a gray area.
well, it might have been gray earlier, but it was not gray near the end. And it turns out, oh, wow, Chris was kind of subconscious, or not subconsciously, but kind of like, implicitly, maybe kind of defending a wife beater, which is not where I want to
No,
be.
you know what? First of all, I don't think anybody listening would think Chris was totally defending that guy.
Yeah.
They really did in those early episodes lay an interesting groundwork for Perry, especially when they go to the counseling session. And he basically confesses, like, I do hit my wife. It is physical. I'm having a problem here. I don't know how to control it. Like, it seemed like that's not something that usually happens in this kind of story.
Right.
So you start to almost feel like, hey, he realizes that he's messed up. Like, he wants to fix it. But the truth is he didn't really want to fix it.
Right. Or he
He
didn't
wanted
want to
her
fix
to
it
fix
enough.
it for him.
Right. And that's the other thing is, there is a lot of discussion, from around this topic of, there's always the question of why doesn't she just leave him? And that's, and I think some progress has been made in the last 30 years of answering the question, why don't women that are getting beaten just leave? There's a lot of dynamics. There's a lot of social pressures. There's a lot of economic pressures. There's a lot of just, inertia pressures that keep people in bad relationships in them. And it seemed like they kind of talked about that for a while, but, he was, just kind of a monster. It's one of those things that, when we talk about things and talk about gray areas in this show, which we did with, Dave Chappelle and his comedy specials last week. And, there are going to be times when time will not be kind to our off-the-cuff or my off-the-cuff reactions to things. And when Nicole Kidman's
when we
husband
reviewed
was...
Big Little Lies, I think we only had seen like 1 or 2 episodes.
We had, yeah. And, yeah, so when Nicole Kidman's husband was socking her right in the stomach really hard, I was thinking, oh boy, this is all the gray areas, all the dynamics of why do couples stay together, and the kind of people that maybe kind of get off on a relationship like this. All of that was gone, and I think that
Go ahead.
Well, I think this did kind of
Sorry.
this did kind of reveal that even when you're in a relationship like that, and there was that moment where she talked about how when she gets beaten up for a while after, she has the power because he's sorry, kind of.
Yeah.
I think that did kind of mask her own trauma and mask her own vulnerability that she didn't have the strength to see, which I think is a common, or which I suspect is a relatively common dynamic where you kind of feel like you're choosing to stay in a bad situation when it's really just you're so traumatized, you're so messed up, you're so whatever, that you're kind of talking yourself into being in a situation isn't any good. Which I think...
Or you think leaving is even harder.
Right.
It's like, I would rather just, take the hits than be on my own.
Right, exactly. And
kind of thing.
So yeah, I thought this was really good. I thought it was, interesting for the first. the first half hour, first 40 minutes of this episode were really masterful in them setting it up that essentially any one of the main characters could have wanted to kill or could be reasonably provoked to kill any reasonable in a television storytelling sense. Could have been provoked to kill nearly any of the other characters. So it was really good. It was really powerful. It was really crazy. I have to say it was really unexpected. Before we went in tonight, I was sure the woman married to the man that Reese Witherspoon had an affair with was going to end up running over Reese Witherspoon. But that didn't happen. Even though now that I think about it, there's a million different
combinations
there's
here.
A million different reasonable combinations that somebody running out. Like, it's pretty much every time someone ran out of that party, I expected them to be crossing a street and get smacked by a car. Which, now that I think about it, I could swear, and apparently I'm sure it didn't happen, but I thought that was the whole thing. Somebody got hit by a car. They said that early in the first episode.
I don't recall that.
I guess they didn't.
I would have to go back and watch.
Yeah, I don't think it happened because obviously that's not what happened. Right.
I thought the show was just so well done, and by the time they get to the fundraiser in the last half, I was on the edge of my seat. I was like, what is going to happen? Who is it going to be? My good buddy Kate was over here today, and we were doing a lot of speculating, and we were really hoping it was going to be Perry. So
right.
I'm sure she was pretty excited, and as was I.
Yeah. So no, it was good. It was spectacular.
But all my friends have been watching this, and we've been talking about it for weeks.
Yeah.
So I've been quite obsessed. I'm kind of bummed it's over.
Yeah. So I'm kind of bummed that it's over too. It's I'll have to admit, because I think I said in the original Big Little Lies episode that I've kind of seen some domestic violence relationships kind of from afar, and kind of watching the inner awful final stages of that playing out is just really horrific. So, I like this in a kind of juicy melodrama type of way, but it was also, I don't know, a little traumatic. It was pretty bad. It was pretty grim, and I guess
it's hard to watch.
It's really hard to watch. It's really, crazy. And I think I said this when we were talking about our Dave Chappelle thing, which is, time makes bigots of us all. And while I never really defended him, sometimes, I'm going to say things off the cuff, and I'm going to talk about things that might seem more black and white to other people. And I'm going to say things that I will regret, and I'm going to say things that don't look good in the light of day or in the passage of time. But I would rather, pop off and say something dumb every once in a while, or every episode, or every segment, than be kind of slow and halting and mincing and afraid. So if I have said something that has offended you, I would just like to take this opportunity to say, screw you, I don't care.
Too bad. Too bad. One of the things I loved about this show was that it didn't always go the way I thought it was going to go. So Jane goes to talk to Laura Dern's character. I forget her name. Renata, I think.
Right.
And it could have been this you stay away from me, total dynasty crap. And instead it was, I'm sorry about what happened. I shouldn't have pushed you.
Right.
I love my son. You love your daughter. We're trying. And that takes an interesting turn. And then in this finale, we find out which kid is bullying the other kids.
Yeah.
And Jane goes to Nicole Kidman's character Celeste and says, it's your son. And that scene could have been, it's not my son. How dare you?
Yeah.
Blah, blah, any lesser show. That's where that would have went. But instead it was, she trusted her friend to tell her the truth.
Right.
And I really like that. I think that there are some things about about this miniseries that are super soapy and like over the top, but there are things in it that are very true, like about women's relationships, and it's true of a lot of people's relationships. I don't want to just say women, where it's very like, I'll destroy you, that
Yeah.
sort of thing.
Yeah.
But also like, the trust that's there, and I think that's what they're really playing up at the end. Like, now these women know, and they're bonded for life, and I think there's a trust there that was never there before. It was so good. I really, really liked it. So if you're still listening and you haven't watched it, you should still watch it.
Right.
Even though
should.
we kind of spoiled it for you.
And now that I think about it, you could have read the book from years ago anyway. So there's also that.
Yeah, you could have just gone on Wikipedia.
Which I do have to wonder what our listeners who had read the book thought when we were talking about this the first time. And, I don't know, it's an interesting examination of domestic violence from a perspective that you don't normally see. It's a little more gray area.
By the way,
It's like,
is that your impression of you?
that's my impression
That's a really
of me.
good impression.
No, that is my impression of me.
Because what's your impression of me?
I can't make it with a human voice box. What I need is an air horn and a wood chipper. So I take the air horn, I turn it on. What I do is I take two air horns and I point them at each other so you get that horrible feedback effect. And then I take those two air horns and throw them into a wood chipper.
I'm really hoping that our listeners don't think that. Because that would make me cry.
It's funny because I'm horribly cruel.
It's funny because you're mean.
That's right. So, all right. What's your next thing? On that note, let's talk about Joss
That's
Whedon.
the end of the show.
That's right.
Oh, you want to talk about that?
Yeah, no, we're talking about all these. We're going into all these. We're gonna do it. We're gonna write them all the way down.
Oh, this is gonna be a really long. This is gonna be a really long show then.
I don't think so. Trust me.
Okay.
Keep going. All right.
All right.
This is your
All
thing.
right. So
Joss Whedon.
the headline. This is the headline I put in. Is Joss Whedon is apparently making a trip to the DC universe and is planning to direct a Batgirl movie. What do you think about that?
I think this could be good. I think this could be cool. I think it is. We are saving our discussion of the DC cinematic universe until Wonder Woman comes out in June. But with every passing day and every weird announcement that comes out of DC, they're pushing this movie, they're canceling that movie. Then they're making the Gotham Sirens movie. They're making Suicide Squad 2. They're making Batgirl. Before they even make a Batman movie, and before they even, we know what's going on with Superman movies and all that. I think it's interesting. I think this is a really good sign. I'm really excited for this director and writer to take on this character. However, I am still, it's kind of once bitten, twice shy kind of thing. There's been two not fantastic DC movies in a row.
But we're talking about Joss Whedon here.
We are. No, that's true. But what I'm saying is there's been, depending on how you count it, there's been 2 or 3 not fantastic DC movies in a row. And for me to trust that they've kind of figured things out and that I can anticipate movies without disappointment on opening day, they're going to have to make 2 or 3 or 4 good movies in a row before it's like, all right, they have their stuff handled. Because it's kind of like the Fox and X-Men. It's sometimes you get like a X-Men First Class, and sometimes you get an Apocalypse. Sometimes you get the Wolverine origin stories Wolverine, and sometimes you get X-Men 2. It's like you can never really know what you're going to get. But it is Joss Whedon. But Warner Brothers has been famously difficult to hold on to directors, especially in this DC universe. So who knows? I mean, until he actually starts shooting, I don't know if I'm going to trust it.
Right.
But we'll see. So, what do you think?
Do you have someone in mind that you think would be good for Batgirl? Should we speculate?
We could. I think all my Batgirls are too old at this point. I would love to see Christina Hendricks, but
She's probably too old.
yes,
I don't think she's too old.
too old.
Hollywood will think she's too old.
Well, yeah, but also, if I remember correctly, Batgirl is really just, what is she, like 18 or something? Like, she really is young in the comics, but I don't know. I don't have any strong feelings. Do you have any feelings about who should be Batgirl?
I'm thinking maybe Haley Steinfeld
Ooh, that's a good one. That's a good one. Good one.
from
good
Age of
one.
17.
Ooh.
Yeah.
Have you seen Edge of 17? By the way,
Nope. No.
have you seen Age of 17, which
I
is a
will.
movie I am unfamiliar with? I didn't know she was in both of them, but
Did I say Age?
I thought you did.
Did I say Age of?
I
I
thought
thought
you
I
did,
said Edge.
but maybe I'm just being a jerk. Maybe.
Probably. What's your headline? Jerk?
I got two headlines. One headline came like a bolt out of the blue last night. I'm going to save it for the end. This one, there's three people that got me into filmmaking. That got me excited about filmmaking, what you could do with film. One is George Lucas. One is Steven Spielberg. And the third is documentarian Ken Burns, the greatest documentarian ever to live in the United States of America. So he has a new documentary series coming out this fall on the Vietnam War. He's been talking about it for years, and he just revealed that it is going to be 18 hours.
Oh, good Lord.
9 2-hour segments, which I believe is his longest documentary by 6 or 7 hours. You know, he did
Right.
the Civil
Because
War. I think
baseball
was
was
9 or
10, right?
Baseball. Hold on. Baseball was 9 innings, and it was about an hour and a half or 2 hours each. So, okay.
Yeah.
Maybe baseball was So yeah, this is going to be as long as baseball, except it's about the Vietnam War. So that's fun. I am very, very excited for this. Ken Burns nobody tells a story like this guy. Nobody gets into the characters living through the history that he describes like he does. He is the best kind of, told from the everyman point of view and told from the leaders and generals and presidents' point of view documentarian out there. I am crazy excited for it. We have a link to a interview that
Did
he
they
gave
say
to
when?
Yahoo. I think it's in September, sometime in the fall.
Okay.
I don't think they gave an actual air date yet. So
Okay.
And the last thing that I am dorking out about, because I've watched it 2.5 or 3 times since last night. If anyone was on last night, being Saturday night, as we record this, if anybody was on Twitter or home alone on a Saturday night, as all you good geeks should be, Rick and Morty season 3, episode 1, just dropped out of the blue as a kind of reverse April Fool's joke. And it's really good, really fun, really crazy. We have a link in our show notes to where you can watch it. I believe legally, but don't quote me on that. So yeah, Rick and Morty. We've talked about it before. Have you watched any Rick and Morty yet? By the way, I think we've talked about it before.
Nope.
But you should really do it. It's fun. Has Dave watched any Rick and Morty?
I know. I don't think so.
Okay. All right.
I don't think so.
All right.
We need to make it happen. I know.
It's one
But
of those.
if you like it, it must be bad, so forget it.
That's right. Let me tell you about
It's no Vietnam documentary.
That's
Forget
right.
it.
Or the villain in Big Little Lies.
Yeah.
What do you say? It's a gray area, Sonia. See, sometimes she hits him. God. All right. Anyway, is there anything else that you would like to...
I look forward to whoever wants to audition to be my new co-host.
The Dorking Out Show
Yeah,
is on Twitter
they can
at
record
Dorking Out
this,
Show,
and I will
where you can find
slink
Chris
off to
at Jet Jurgens
into obscurity
and Sonia
to
at
finish my
The
kids'
Sonia
book.
Show. You can read about Sonia's random adventures.
Is there anything
at
else that you would like to say
thesoniashow.com.
before we
And
wrap
track the
this
slow
up?
and creeping progress of Chris's
I'll
novel
just say goodbye.
and his other hijinks at
Bye!
jetjurgens.com. You can find out more about the Dorking Out Show at dorkingoutshow.com. While you're over there, you can support us by giving us a review on iTunes. We have a handy-dandy iTunes link to whisk you right back to 2007, where you can leave your review and 5-star rating in iTunes. We'd do it for your podcast. Want to dork out even more? Well, you can sign up for our newsletter, where you'll get all the headlines we use as fuel for the show. That's it for this week. Thanks for listening.